Nicole, thanks so much for being here. This is great. I mean, it completely makes sense why we're talking about esports in conjunction with this F1 event. Can you just take a step back and maybe paint the picture for us just how big esports has grown in the past few years?
Very much so, and thanks Jennifer and Bloomberg for having me. So for those that are completely unfamiliar, esports is the best way to think of us is like a university athletics department. We're one brand with many teams under us that play instead of Michigan with basketball or football. We are evil geniuses with League of Legends and Dota. And so what that begets is a very large scale, from a global reach perspective, teams that have fans across the globe, because the player bases of these games, like many traditional sports, is in the millions. And so we kind of live in that intersection of being a digital product that intersects with sports and entertainment.
And when we look at the numbers specifically, Nicole, I mean, it's boomed over the past 2 years. Can you break down a little bit of that for us?
Well, the esports industry is about to hit a little over $1 billion in terms of revenue, much of which comes from traditional sports style revenue streams. But especially during the pandemic, when a lot of the world went online and at home, the esports and gaming, the mental prototype that someone might have had for what is this space, who is part of this space, broadened. Because it's really how Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and young millennials connect with many people and socialize. And it's not just one type of person that participates in the breadth of gaming. It is truly like fashion or music, very diverse, very digital, very inclusive.
And when we talk about people coming into the industry, I think it's important for people to know you were in private equity prior to this, and you decided to transition into gaming. Why? What was sort of your thought process?
My parents ask the same thing every day. No, so I was in private equity, worked distressed asset turnarounds, which maybe doesn't bode well for coming into EG after that. But Evil Geniuses came to us as an investment, and at the time, like many esports organizations, even as recent as 3 to 5 years ago, were underfunded and not well professionalized from a business point of view. Many esports organizations started as pure entertainment or even players running the org like EG. And so the infrastructure to make a scalable business beyond just a passion play of a sport was really needed. And so I came into EG 3 years ago, actually this week, and really I tease my team, I'm the steak, they're all the sizzle. So I make sure the lights stay on and things work and we can really build and grow. But the reason why this was interesting to me was not the title, it's very much the opportunity of esports being in capturing the eyes, hearts, and wallets of young global audiences is a space that traditional media and entertainment, traditional sports that are aging up and out and struggle with limited geo-affiliation. These are problems that everyone's trying to solve, so being able to be at the forefront of those challenges is incredible.
Well, considering that and considering your background, how did you approach then the industry as a whole? I mean, considering what you were just saying, traditional sports have had issues attracting young people. So what did you do with the business itself?
And I know it's annoying because it's a buzzword, but first and foremost, you have to be authentic. Everyone here especially, they're all experts around the Gen Z and young millennial consumer, right? They don't like being advertised to. They spend where their values are aligned. They don't so much care about what is local to them versus what is affordable or digitally accessible. And esports has a lot of those features, but unlike a sports team that is very beholden to a geo-affiliated fan or their win-loss record, we are able to create a brand in containing all of what we do to excite and inspire and get young consumers and eyeballs to spend against a purpose-driven initiative, which is really exciting. And no one has it perfect. I've only been here 3 years, definitely don't have it perfect, but it's been exciting to really curate what is the modern era of entertainment.
Does it look differently around the world? I mean, where is how does it differ when you look at different cultures and sort of how people are engaging with gaming and in esports?
Very much so. I would say actually North America, despite having the most valuable consumer from an advertising perspective, as well as being popular, is the least popular region globally in terms of where esports is celebrated. You go to the APAC community, esports athletes are your modern day North American Beyoncés. They are known, celebrated, very mass proliferated in terms of awareness, and that trend is trickling westward. Especially recently, a lot of bigger developers have started franchising their games, which has led to better mass awareness in terms of what is esports, how do you participate, how do you understand. But the North American space is still growing, especially compared to the maturity you find in the EU or APAC regions.
For Evil Geniuses, what are the markets that you're paying attention to when you think about that?
So we're a little interesting in where we approach our target demographic of fans. Our competitive teams are focused on lifting trophies. And so most of those fans skew towards the broader demographics of who watches esports today. Skews young, skews male. And for us, skews North American. But where we've diversified and tried to bring in the broader group of who watches gaming, which in the North America region especially, 45% of gamers are women. But you wouldn't think that based on who's represented and shows up on the athletic side. So we've branched into doing also content creators, personalities, people that are focused not on being the best at the game, but being someone that you enjoy to watch on stream, on YouTube, or other media distribution platforms. And with there, we've loved putting megaphones behind the true diversity of who participates in the gaming scene. We have women, we have non-binary individuals, we have comedians, we have fashion models, we have people that are grounded in gaming but are multi-hyphenate creators to reach that broader audience of who can participate in the gaming scene.
Do you think that's integral to the continued business growth for Evil Geniuses as a whole and also the talent that you bring in?
Very much so. If esports as a whole cannot get out of its own way and who is part of this community, we will not be as commercially successful or viable in the longer term. We have to capture the breadth of the fans that are there in a more organic and sticky way.
And let's talk more about that, especially when you think about the gaming community, and you mentioned sort of who is playing, who are the faces in front of and behind. I don't think it's any secret that there's been some issues with inclusion and diversity in terms of the gaming industry. I mean, has that changed just in the few years that you've been with Evil Geniuses? Not that you're the sole person who needs to change it, but you know.
I appreciate that. Yeah, the gaming space, it's no secret, historically has not been great for people that weren't of a certain type of demographic, especially in the US. But that doesn't have to be that way, but it does require investment and intentionality around why and what you do as a business. And myself, not being a white male, I take that really seriously. And for when we were rebuilding Evil Geniuses, making sure we're thoughtful, not just to check marketing boxes, but for a space that isn't solid yet. We need to find innovators and disruptors to bring this forward. And if like only hires like, you're not going to be innovating. So we care a lot about diversity from not only management experience and background. I have leaders from traditional sports to traditional entertainment to financial services, but even in-game and in our talent representation, how do we find diverse talent through empirical means, leveraging data, leveraging professional scouting versus a lot of historic gaming and esports, which was who you know was how you got in. I'm lucky that I have a board and investors that are aligned with that mission to support that, because it does take time. It's not the easier route, but that is where we found much of our fan loyalty success, as well as even our competitive success. EG is actually one of the only esports teams that's ever started mixed gender rosters in competitive play, considering this is not a gendered sport physically. And we're actually the leading esports team that has female, LGBTQ, and people of color followers, which are consumers everyone should care about.
Do brands respond to that then?
Very much so. I would say we're really lucky to have partners and sponsors, which is the main form of revenue for us, that tend to be more brand and value aligned, and our fans respond well to us. So it doesn't seem like an advertisement when we work with brands, because we make sure we integrate in a way that supports our mission and where we're going.
What does that look like when you partner with the brand? Can you just walk us through sort of how it works with the teams and with the players themselves?
So it's an interesting space. Part of the beauty, putting on my financial cap, of esports is from a talent representation perspective and management, we look more like music than traditional sports. The agency scene isn't well defined. We own more of our player rights. So when you sponsor or work with an esports organization, you get bespoke access to our players that you wouldn't get if you tried to work with an NBA player, for example. And so we've been able to be really creative on what are our partners' business goals, what are we trying to achieve, and do something really fun. A goofy example is LG, one of our partners, which is fantastic. We recently did a tournament series with them where we brought DJ Khaled and Megan Fox in to be coached by our coaches of our teams. It was a disaster. They were terrible.
Yeah, I was like,
but what a fun thing to watch. And it was trending on the internet, of course, because it's an unexpected way to get LG's brand, their Ultra Gear monitors out into the eyes and hearts of consumers in a fun way. Didn't feel like an ad, right? And so we can do that in a lot of different ways where young consumers respond better to that type of bespoke content, media type play.
And when we talk about partnerships as well, I think it's really interesting. Evil Genius has partnered with a Premier League team, Wolverhampton, which when you think about esports and traditional sports coming together, the demographic of Wolverhampton is a little bit different than I'm assuming what Evil Genius.
That is fair.
Right?
Whenever I'm in London, people make fun of me, so I'm sorry for those that are from the UK and are aware of Wolverhampton. But on the plus side, an English Premier League team they've been around since 1874, right? They know how to run a good athletics operation, which ironically enough is oftentimes the weak point of many esports teams in terms of their team side. So us having access and being able to bounce our playbook around how do you structure and build athletes and good humans in the space has been at the forefront of one of my priorities, and having an English Premier League team's infrastructure and guidance and network has been critical to accelerating that. What was also interesting is, as not one of the big three English Premier League teams, Wolves has strong fandom that tends to follow their players, right? Raul Jimenez is a Mexican player, big proportion of their Mexican fans are fans of him versus they were fans of Wolves before then. But esports is a little different, where of course we have players and of course there's fans of the players, but one of the things that keeps us up at night is we don't own the IP of what we play. So games come and go, players come and go. We have to, from the onset, be very aware of why is someone a fan of Evil Geniuses more than maybe one of our excellent players or creators, and that knowledge of someone being a fan of a franchise and what that franchise stands for. Almost every traditional sports team is trying to crack that nut, and that complement of knowledge has been really helpful on the back end of our partnership.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, what is it that the Wolverhampton is getting out of the deal itself, right? Because they have a huge fan base, so
Exactly.
sort of
It's definitely the top-line brand knowledge, as well as North American young audiences. Many Premier League teams, if you're not kind of the big three, I think struggle getting young audiences to follow and get engaged, and we provide good knowledge, as well as one interesting thing is Wolverhampton Wanderers, owned by Fosun Sports Group. EG also has a very strong APAC presence. We're actually one of the most followed Western esports organizations in China. And so having good ability to activate, engage, and use their resources to localize and do joint activations is a really unparalleled opportunity for us.
Do you see the two existing sort of going forward traditional sports? I mean, now people are going to live events again, but you know, during the pandemic, we saw people playing esports more than ever, tuning in. I mean, what do you sort of think is the future of these two things coexisting with one another?
I think you see it more and more, especially in the US. Many traditional sports franchises are looking to buy esports teams as another arm to engage their younger audiences and demographics. And during COVID, the pandemic, when people were not in arenas, traditional sports are measured by heads and seats in stadium. We are measured by eyeballs reach. We're a little bit like Facebook 10 years ago, right? Or Meta, bear with me. And so that ability where COVID, you know, one of our partners previously was a sponsor of the Yankees, and was like, what do we do now? You should think about esports. And we were able to hit the same metrics in terms of fan engagement because we were more prepared to be digital and bring in different eyes to their brand. And so I definitely think the complement of learning will be important going forward as the space is expensive. Esports organizations and these athletes they're not minimum wage workers. They tend to make 6 to 7 figure salaries with multi-million-dollar prize pools on the line and viewership and eyes on them in the millions. So the scale and the professionalism that a lot of traditional sports franchises have of how to manage that scale is a good learning for us too.
Do you think we've hit peak? I mean, I'm always fascinated looking at teenagers or, you know, some of these gamers who, as you mentioned, are making millions of dollars. Are we at the peak and it might come down? What do you think?
It's a controversial topic. I would say there will be definitely some correction as the space overall. There was, I would say, probably around the time of my entrance, a very big boom. There were a bajillion esports organizations run by people and kids seeing, oh, this is exciting, and this is a business, I'll enter. That's consolidating, it is settling. There's probably less than 50 relevant esports organizations in the world today. And it's really those that were thoughtful around not just how to build a brand, but also how to build a business that scales with technology changes, with funding and being able to manage investors, things that maybe sound obvious to this group in the room, but were not obvious for the demographic of historic esports leaders. And so while the business continues to mature, a lot of these very outsized salaries will likely course correct as more developers realize the benefit of owning their league and going into the franchise system. That creates a closed market where salaries, again, will correct. But I think the reach and the excitement of esports from a volume perspective is just getting started.
What do you think the trajectory is for 2022 for esports? I mean, we're at, in Miami with the Formula One event happening right now. I mean, what does it look like sort of in the short term?
Oh, I think it's super exciting. There's especially because one of the biggest esports events in the world, Riot runs a game called League of Legends, and the League of Legends Championship Series is actually the third most popular sport for kids in the US under the age of 25. So sorry, hockey, sorry, baseball. League of Legends is here. Wow. The biggest event, the kind of our Super Bowl equivalent, and is also held in a North American roadshow this year. The first time it's not been held in APAC or EU for a bit of time, I want to say 4 or 5 years. And so for people to really see, right, a lot of this seems very conceptual, not material, not tangible. Like, what is esports, what am I getting? But to have access, especially in the North American region, to these events that bring hundreds of thousands of live attendees and millions of concurrent digital followers and viewers, that's something that most cities will realize and get very excited by and want to continue to support. Concurrently, too, in the collegiate scene, many US universities are investing in esports programs, whether it's sports analytics and esports teams and clubs, realizing it's a driver of recruitment. And so as universities and academia also enter more into creating professional pipelines, the space will seem less spooky, less inaccessible, and more exciting as a traditional and stable career path.
How far out do you think we are from there? I didn't realize universities are...
I'd say probably the next 3 years, especially I believe Michigan is building a huge program around esports, and to have like a Big 30 school to go invest that heavily is really, really exciting. A good example too, I was recently in Austin, and the UT system, their esports club has over 3,000 students in it. It's one of their biggest intramural clubs. The school wasn't aware of that, and so making sure the awareness of there's people that have interest, and then how do you maximize the opportunity will just grow really quickly.
And Nicole, when it comes to success, I mean, how does Evil Genius measure success? How do you know that you're sort of on the right track? You mentioned, the industry might correct itself. How do you know that you're sort of headed in the right direction as there's more people coming in?
For sure. Well, if my board's listening, of course, financials. But it's really interesting because we blend as a sports team meets a media company. And so we have some elements, and a lot of our metrics, right, are around competitive performance. Because you don't have to be a winner to get a lot of the revenue streams that we have, but it definitely helps. It opens the door like a college degree. And so making sure we keep that pinnacle of athletic performance is top of mind. Of course, building a stable business is critical. And then cultural. We are in a unique position where we can shape the face of what and how young people view sports entertainment representation for them. And again, that's really exciting to help push a new narrative around it doesn't have to be the way that it was for your parents, and you can be seen and heard and part of this community, which helps us, right? The more people that want to be a part of esports and are aware of it and think positively of that only helps us. So really that financial, cultural, and competitive top of mind.
And a lot of young people are seeing this as a viable career for themselves, right? Is that sort of a far-fetched idea, or you think there's a lot of opportunity in this?
Very much not. I think the misnomer or the misinformation around that is a lot of people are like, oh, I'll be an esports pro. That's kind of like saying, oh, I'm going to be a baseball star. Like you are the most excellent of the excellent, and that is a very hard career path, irrespective of the field that you're in. But what I'm very excited is people are realizing, oh, I'm great at sponsorship sales. There's paths for esports in that. Or I'm an excellent accountant. I can go in esports. Or I love being a brand marketer and exciting audiences with new demographics. You can work in esports. The back office infrastructure awareness as real career paths is just as exciting, to me at least, again, being a boring private equity person. It's just as exciting as going pro or being aware that pro is a path. But the more we can break down the curve, the better. A funny anecdote, one of our absolute superstar players, Rookie of the Year, when we called his parents, he was 16 at the time, we wanted to recruit him for our upcoming season, called his parents, he's like the best in the world at this game.
This is like the NFL draft a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And we called his parents, like, we want to sign JoJo to our team in League of Legends. Like, comes a salary, 401k, we'd move him, we'd house him, like explaining what we do. And his parents were literally like, wait, is that what he does on the computer all day? They had no idea their son was like the Kobe Bryant of League of Legends. And to just continue to build that awareness and awareness of stability, and like, he's probably out earning his entire family right now, as we just won our current, the US Spring Split Championships with him. So just finding those opportunities to build that this is real, this is an opportunity is great.
And even in when you think of the game itself and designing
Yes.
the game, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Very much so.
Yeah. All right, Nicole, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.